It'll be an NBA record margin of victory for the Grizzlies tonight.
31 on the night. All smiles for the Thunder.
The NBA is by far no stranger to unbelievable blowouts. I mean, people call it the National Blowout Association for a reason. But very few have done it better than the 2011 Cavs when they took on Kobe's Lakers. They managed to only score 25 points by halftime and somehow finished the game with just 57 points as an entire team. That's one of the lowest point totals ever in NBA history. They lost by 55 points, extending their losing streak to 11 games. They shot 1 for 14 as a team from 3, and their leading scorer had just 12 points. For the Lakers, their entire starting lineup scored double-digit points, and they all had a plus-minus ratio of over 40. The most impressive part about this whole thing, though, is that LeBron led this team to 61 wins the year before. This next game is just as bad, though. In 2018, the Bulls managed to not score a single point until halfway through the first quarter, losing to the Kyrie-led Celtics by 56 points. This game was made even worse, though, because it was actually at home in Chicago, and those fans were not happy.
As the Boston Celtics.
Shaq Harrison led the Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen Bulls with 20 points, which at the time was a career high for him. Every single player on the Celtics roster scored, and obviously it is still the biggest loss in Chicago Bulls history. However, the worst loss in playoff history goes to the New Orleans Hornets, who lost by 58 points to the Denver Nuggets in 2009. We've seen plenty of blowout losses in the playoffs before, but to lose by 58 points makes you seem like you shouldn't even be playing on the same floor. The Hornets were actually a solid team, but unfortunately their best player in 23-year-old Chris Paul had more turnovers than points. No player on the team made more than 4 shots, and almost half their points came from the free throw line. This game was also at home, so the arena was mostly empty by the fourth quarter during a playoff game. 6 different players scored in double digits for the Nuggets, while Carmelo Anthony led the team with 26 points in the first 3 quarters. The last time there was a playoff loss this bad in the NBA was 1956. But that brings us to yet another blowout from 2018, where a bad Hornets team beat an even worse Grizzlies team by 61 points. The only thing that kept this game semi-entertaining was the fact that Kemba Walker scored 46 points in the first 3 quarters alone. He shot 10 for 14 from 3, and everybody on the roster except for one player scored. It was an absolute slaughter from start to finish, and they even did that without Dwight Howard, who was suspended for getting too many technicals. For the Grizzlies, they were missing their really only bright spots in Mike Conley and Marc Gasol, but that's still no excuse to lose by over 60. And again, to nobody's surprise, not a single player on that roster is still on the team today, and almost all of them aren't even in the league anymore. But now we've reached the most recent blowout and the inspiration for this video. In November, the first time the Blazers took on the OKC Thunder, they lost by 43 points. And fast forward to January when they played them again, they somehow lost by 62. I don't know if the Thunder just have it out for them, but to outscore the Blazers by 105 points in just 2 games is actually crazy. Scoot Henderson finished this game with a plus-minus ratio of -56, which is one of the worst of all time, but if we're being honest, his whole team was right there with him. The Blazers only had 2 players score over 10 points, and neither one of them had more than 15. The Thunder actually had more turnovers than them, but they couldn't make a shot to save their lives. They shouldn't feel too bad though, because the Thunder have been on fire and are only getting hotter. Although that doesn't fix the fact that I've seen better offense and defense at my local YMCA. This next game is tied for the second worst blowout in NBA history, but I give it a little bit of leeway because it happened during the preseason. But still, that's no reason to ever lose a game by 68 points. Yeah, the Hornets are on this list again, but this time on the other side of it, losing to the Mavericks by 68 points back in 2021. And to not be confused, the Chris Paul Hornets eventually became the Pelicans, so that doesn't count. 15 different players for the Mavericks scored a point. 15 different players. And with a blowout like that, Luka had to have dominated, right? Nope, he only scored 10 points. They beat the Hornets by 68, while one of the best scorers in basketball had just 10 points. If he actually treated this like a real game, he could have scored more points by himself than the Hornets had total. It was James Bouknight that led them in points, and as a team they shot just 27% from the field on top of throwing 22 turnovers. while the Mavericks shot 51% from the field and made 18 threes, shooting 40%, so that doesn't help either. However, that brings us to the final game of the video and the worst single game blowout in NBA history. Again in 2021, but this time in the regular season, the OKC Thunder actually lost to the Grizzlies by 73 points. This game is quite possibly the biggest blowout in all of sports history. I'm not even kidding, to lose a game by 50 is crazy, and to lose a game by 60 is unreal, but to lose a game by over 70 points is borderline criminal. 9 different players for the Grizzlies scored over 10 points, and all 12 players on the team scored. Jaren Jackson Jr. led the team in points with 27, and as a team they shot over 62% from the field, which gets even crazier when you factor in they shot 53% from 3 on 36 shots, while the Thunder shot a measly 33% total. The Grizzlies had 31 assists and scored more points in just the paint alone than the Thunder had as a team. It's safe to say it's crazy to see how far this Thunder team has come. They went from being on this list as the worst loss in NBA history to now putting other teams on the same list. And if this record ever gets broken, they need to completely shut down that franchise. Or just maybe that franchise will turn into the next NBA dynasty.